Tonight, you can close your bedroom door, pull the curtains, put on headphones, lock your phone, and disappear without actually going anywhere. That is an absurd amount of privacy. Now imagine trying to do the same thing in a crowded house where people eat, sleep, work, store goods, receive customers, raise children, and occasionally walk through your room just to reach another room. Your private space is now approximately the inside of your own skull. So what did humans do before privacy existed? Well, privacy did exist. It just did not always look like a locked bedroom, a bathroom stall, or a password-protected phone. There was no single moment when someone invented privacy. Humans have probably always controlled access to themselves in some way. But different societies drew the boundary in different places. Today, many of us think of privacy as something belonging to the individual. My room. My messages. My body. My information. In other societies, the private unit might have been the household, the family, or a small community. Something could be hidden from outsiders while still being known by everyone inside the group. So the real question is not whether people had privacy. The real question is, what counted as private, and how did people create it? Let us begin with the home. Today, a house is often imagined as a private container. You enter, close the front door, and the outside world stays outside. But many homes in the past were not only homes. They were workshops, shops, storage spaces, meeting places, and sometimes accommodation for workers, guests, or travelers. A family might cook in the same space where they worked. Customers could enter during the day. Servants moved between rooms. Children, relatives, lodgers, and animals all shared limited space. And even if a house had several rooms, those rooms did not always work like modern rooms. Imagine that every room leads directly into the next one. To reach the kitchen, someone walks through your sleeping area. To reach the stairs, someone walks through the kitchen. To reach the final room, everyone walks through everyone else's life. A private house did not necessarily create a private person. Marlow wants 10 quiet minutes. Unfortunately, the house wants to cook dinner, sell cloth, repair a chair, host a cousin, and store 3 chickens. The chickens do not respect boundaries. Sleep was not much more private. In many historical communities, sharing beds and sleeping spaces was normal. Space was limited. Beds were expensive. Sharing body heat was useful. Sleeping near other people could also provide comfort and security. The person beside you might be your spouse, child, relative, servant, guest, or another traveler assigned to the same bed. So if Marlow wakes up at 3 in the morning, he may not ask, "What time is it?" He may ask, "Who are all of you?" Of course, sleeping customs varied enormously between cultures, social classes, households, and historical periods. But the expectation that every person should have a separate bedroom is relatively recent and still far from universal. When walls were unavailable, people created smaller boundaries. They lowered their voices. They turned away. They used blankets or curtains. They waited until other people were asleep. And sometimes they relied on an unwritten social agreement: everyone knows what is happening. Everyone simply agrees not to acknowledge it. Privacy was not always created by separation. Sometimes it was created by cooperation. And then we reach the part of history that makes modern people suddenly appreciate bathroom stalls. The Roman world built public latrines with multiple seats arranged beside one another. No private cubicles. No individual doors. No small sign saying, "Occupied." To be clear, this does not mean every Roman enjoyed holding long conversations while using the toilet. Different places probably had different customs, and experiences would have depended on status, location, and time period. But the buildings themselves reveal something important. Activities that seem automatically private to us have not always been treated that way. Marlow enters the room. He sees a row of seats. He looks around for a partition. There is no partition. A stranger sits beside him. The stranger smiles. Marlow decides he can wait. The Romans developed roads, aqueducts, concrete, and large-scale sanitation. The bathroom partition remained in early access. But people still needed private moments. They wanted to change clothes, have intimate relationships, hide possessions, write letters, pray, grieve, think, and speak without everyone hearing. So how did they do it without modern bedrooms? They used whatever boundaries were available. Timing was a boundary. You waited until other people left or fell asleep. Distance was a boundary. You moved to the edge of the house, the village, or the group. Sound was a boundary. You lowered your voice or chose a noisy place where others could not easily hear. Furniture was a boundary. Curtains, chests, enclosed beds, screens, and locked containers could protect bodies, conversations, or possessions. Access was also a boundary. A room did not need to be empty to feel private. It only needed to contain the right people. Privacy was often less about being completely alone, and more about controlling who was allowed to enter the moment. Etiquette mattered too. Someone might notice that you were whispering, writing a letter, closing a curtain, or moving away from the group. Good manners required them not to stare, listen, interrupt, or repeat what they discovered. In other words, some privacy existed only because everyone agreed to pretend they had seen nothing. Architecture eventually made these boundaries easier to enforce. Imagine a house where every room connects directly to the next. Now add a corridor. Suddenly, people can reach one room without walking through another person's space. Add separate staircases, smaller chambers, stronger doors, and locks, and the house begins sorting people. Visitors stay near the entrance. Workers use certain routes. Family members move farther inside. Private spaces become easier to create. But this was not a simple story of humanity moving from no privacy to perfect privacy. Some architectural changes created separation. Others created better surveillance. A household owner could control who entered a room, but servants and workers might still be watched constantly. A locked door is useful only when you control the key. And that reveals the uncomfortable part of privacy. Privacy has often depended on wealth, status, gender, and power. One person has a private bedroom. Another sleeps near the kitchen. One person stores letters in a locked box. Another does not control the room where they sleep. One person can tell everyone to leave. Another person is expected to remain available at all times. Even inside the same house, one person's privacy could be built from another person's lack of it. The ability to say, "Leave me alone," only works when other people are expected to obey. Over time, privacy became more than a social habit or a feature of architecture. It increasingly became something people described as a legal right. In the late 19th century, new technologies created new ways to expose private life. Photography could capture a person's image. Newspapers could spread personal information to large audiences. Something that once remained inside a neighborhood could suddenly be seen by thousands of strangers. Legal thinkers began arguing that people needed protection from this new kind of intrusion. The problem was no longer only someone walking into your room. It was someone taking part of your private life and distributing it beyond your control. The pattern feels strangely familiar. First, humans invent a new way to invade privacy. Then, slightly alarmed, they begin discussing rules. Today, many people have access to forms of privacy that would once have been difficult, expensive, or impossible. A private bedroom. A bathroom with a lock. Personal messages. Headphones. Passwords. Individual devices. And then we carry a glowing rectangle that may know where we are, who we speak to, what we search for, what we watch, and which advertisement finally made us buy something at 2 a.m. Humans spent centuries building walls around private life. Then we invented a device that carries private life through the front door. The strange part is not that privacy disappeared. It changed shape again. Just as it always has. People in the past were not simply shameless versions of modern humans who felt comfortable being watched constantly. They created boundaries using the tools available to them. Distance. Darkness. Timing. Fabric. Furniture. Rooms. Doors. Locks. Etiquette. And eventually, law. Privacy was never one invention. It was thousands of small agreements about who could enter, who could look, who could listen, and who was expected to pretend they noticed nothing. Marlow finally closes his bedroom door. The room is quiet. His phone lights up. Location services would like to know where you are.